Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session on research and capacity building, looking at how we're going to accelerate the deployment of sustainable energy technologies through human intellectual capital development. As you may know, this is a very opportune time to take up this session. The UAE has just announced the launch of a National Innovation Strategy, which aims to make the UAE one of the world's most innovative economies in 7 years. In order to achieve this strategy, there'll be a focus on developing human capital, physical and financial capital, and R&D, as well as supportive regulations and policies. You can only achieve an integrated launch of all those different activities if you have a very well-defined plan. The UAE has put together 4 different streams of activity which focus on individuals, corporations, institutions, and government. Within those themes and within that thrust amount of activity, we have 7 different sectors which will also be part of the strategy. The sectors are renewable energy, water, transportation, technology, space, health, and education. We're fortunate to have with us today experts and leaders in each of these different fields, also experts and leaders across industry, government, academia. I'll welcome them to the stage very shortly, and they'll be engaging with me in a discussion on how we can promote and advance sustainable energy in a very robust and successful way. So first, I'd like to welcome to the stage Dr. Michael Ladwig, Director of Scientific Cooperation at Alstom, Dr. Vladimir Bulovich, Associate Dean for Innovation at the MIT School of Engineering, Dr. Yehia Al-Marzuki, Executive Director, Strategic Learning and Development at Tawazun, Dr. Mohammed Ebrahim Amula, Senior Vice President, Research and Development at Leaf University, Dr. Rabi Samata-Roy, Vice President, Technology Innovation, Lockheed Martin, and Michael Pell, Vice President, Innovation at Baruch. Okay, we're going to start off the discussion today with Dr. Ladwig. Michael, tell us a little bit about how Alstom, which is one of the world's leaders in power generation, contributing about 25% of total global power generation across renewable energy and also thermoelectric power generation. How are you looking at R&D in order to advance the sustainable energy agenda, given that we are seeing such a rapid uptake of renewables and sustainable energy technologies globally?
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to explain our system here. Yes, you're right. We have a lot of businesses which are dealing with different types of generations in the energy sector, from wind to hydro to thermal power stations to nuclear power stations. And everybody of these organizations has his own R&D agenda. Therefore, it is important that we have an organization which is across these businesses and align the different R&D activities and talk about the future. Because when you are a member of these R&D businesses, you are looking in a, let's say, 5 to 6 years time period, and that's not sustainable. We are looking for something what comes later. We are setting the seeds for the future generation in energy sector. And therefore, we have put on top of these businesses an organization which we call technology, which has its own R&D organization and is working like an open innovation approach. So we are working here with more than 200 universities across the globe together with non-universities research organizations. We are sponsoring PhD students and professors over there. We have R&D programs also here in the region to align and to cooperate together with governments, together with the local industry, the experts over there, and combining it together with the research and the development of talents and people. And they're attracting them for our R&D organizations, thinking in a term of 5 to 10 to even 25 years from now. So this has proven in the last 10 years a very good approach, where we in the technology sector are developing possible future products which at a certain process gate review are transferred to the business to become then a product.
Excellent. So it takes a long-term outlook and perspective in order to be successful.
That's correct.
Thank you. Vladimir, we'll move next to you. MIT is known to be one of the leading, if not the leading, global universities in engineering and science, and you are the Associate Dean for Innovation. Can you tell us a little bit about why MIT, being such a leading global university, has embarked upon an innovation strategy now, after so many years of being successful in this area?
Sure. I think it's important to reflect that universities have only 2 products, knowledge and people. And our best product are our people. Indeed, the successes of our alums is what makes MIT right now successful. New generations of students want to join us to become those successful alums. So how do we prepare the present generation of students for that success is at the core of our innovation initiative. We have recognized that over the past decade, the innovation system has changed in the world, where it used to be that the 10-year cycle of innovation was divided between universities in the beginning and corporate laboratories afterwards. Hence, first 3 years might be in the hands of universities, next 7 in the hands of corporate labs, and after 10 years, after 100 of ideas started in universities, you might get a couple of products that would indeed be successful and could reach millions of people. That cycle has changed by the change in the industry itself. Corporate labs don't exist in the way they used to be. The focus of industrial houses now is in the very last couple of years of the innovation cycle. So, first 3 years at university, last couple in the development houses, but the middle part, no one is touching. And that is where the entrepreneurship and innovation step in. And that's actually a tremendous responsibility from perspective of a university like ours, is how do we prepare our students to actually fill that gap, be the ones to innovate the next technology that can truly be transformational. I think what we are seeing is when it comes to technical advancements, there have been amazing advancement in software development because the cycle is very short, the scale up is very simple, the proving is your laptop and a couple of friends who can observe it. That is much, much harder to do in a hardware development. So the result is that the last decade has been about software advancements that indeed have proven extremely profitable and very important for society. Is it Yahoo or Facebook or Google? These are fantastic advancements that rest on the hardware of a decade ago. Hence, the question becomes on how do we, don't forget, that need to improve that hardware and actually advance the world beyond where it is today, because we are facing some extremely important challenges. Very simple one, and this I'll stop after this one, is in the software arena. For example, today, your cell phone uses on the order of 300 kilowatt hours per year. That's a lot of energy, and you say it can't be. Well, it can if you account for cloud computing, air conditioning for the cloud computing units. Anytime you do the switching somewhere in the cloud, that costs energy. To the point where in 2010, it was about 1.3% of the world's electricity that was being consumed for cloud computing. And in 2020, projection is that we'll need 1,000 times more. That comes out to 1,300% of world's electricity. That's way more than we have, about 13 times more than we have. And unless we develop a new hardware platform, that software cannot advance to where we expect our software innovations will lead. So we need to figure out how do we generate those innovators today at the university to be able to allow us to rethink what the hardware future will be like so that we can advance the world as we know it.
That's excellent. So understanding the challenges deeply and having the educational system bring in those innovators for the future to solve those problems that we're aware of.
Absolutely, and the key components to having that happen. Universities, we are very good in teaching you basic science, basic technology. We are not particularly good in understanding what are the world needs. We can study it, we can spend time doing it, or much more effectively, we can partner with companies like yours that indeed choose to engage universities back in a reverse partnership. Because through the learnings of bringing in industry experts into universities, we found that we can be very, very effective. I often say that universities can solve any problem. We just do not know what to work on. And coming up with that focus would allow us to advance technology way beyond. So that partnership between university, industry, government policies make a tremendous difference as well. And then add 2 more players, which is risk capital, in order those who recognize an opportunity that might one day be profitable, as well, most importantly, that individual, the inventor or the entrepreneur, who will start the idea and hence provide the seed for the whole thing to blossom.
Thank you, Vladimir. I appreciate that. Dr. Yehia, you're next. So you are in charge of strategic learning at Tawazun, which is one of the most important organizations in the UAE locally for developing advanced industries. I know you must have some challenges in developing or seeing the human capital come to you that are able to be part of these industries. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges, a little bit about what Tawazun has been doing and what you've been doing in order to make this a feasible solution of bringing human capital to new industries in the UAE?
Thank you. Obviously, the major challenge that we are having as an industry, let me start by saying that Tawazun in the business of, our mandate is in business of manufacturing. So we have 12 companies in the manufacturing sector, oil and gas, aerospace, munition. So how do we entice the young Emirati into the STEM? Science, technology, engineering, and math early on. And that has been a challenge. Challenge number two, how do we entice female Emiratis to the industry? And we have taken a couple of steps by, there is a science festival that I don't know if some of you have seen that. We sponsored that. Emirati Skills. We are collaborating with the ADEC, the Abu Dhabi Educational Council, to early on target. Our target has been too little, too late. Usually we targeted with those who goes to university. I was attending, I've said that in one of the conferences, attending the INGEX, the engineering exhibition at one of the university, and I showed the youngster who was in second and third year of the university the opportunity, career opportunity in the manufacturing sectors. And then they all came to me and said, well, you are too late. I wish I had this information in high school. And now I'm in third year, I cannot, go back. And there are also, and so Tawazun has taken some lead. We have established our own the sort of mini incubator. We have created our own Tawazun training center. But as part of sustainability, I would like to pass this curriculum that we develop and embed it into the universities, where all possible. So the challenges still remain. We have made some progress. We have created our own pipeline of engineers. Currently, we have about 150 in the pipeline. And manufacturing is, for us, we are in an infancy period. We have a lot to learn, and we are going through the learning curve. Scholarship offices, we have been talking to them, and we early on targeting the student so they can come and actively participate in the manufacturing sector.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. Dr. Mohammed, you're next. So, like Mazar Institute, Khalifa University has established itself as a leading university in the region in science and technology, and you're overseeing the research activities. I know that you're thinking about energy and sustainability within this ecosystem, which is still maturing. We don't have all of the framework for having an institution succeed as easily as they may in another economy, such as the US, where there's funding agencies and the like. Tell us a little bit about how you're looking at energy and sustainability at Khalifa University, and anything you want to say about the challenges you face in developing a research organization in the context in which we operate.
Thank you, Steve, for inviting me to this session. As you mentioned in your opening remarks, I mean, the country has defined its innovation strategy just recently. And as you mentioned also, that one of the key areas within that is energy. And I would like to go back to what Professor Vladimir just said, and is that, I mean, as a university, we would like to know what is it that we want or we are supposed to be work on in terms of research, in terms of education. So there need to be, once that we have identified now energy as a key strategic area, then the country as a whole, I think between the government, the industry, and academia, we need to sit together and define what is it what we want to do within energy. We need to define what are the strategic priorities. This needs to be also supported with an energy policy. What is it that we want to do within sustainable energy? So all of these questions need to be, or all of these priorities need to be defined together between the three parts of the ecosystem. Once you do that, then universities can contribute and can contribute to achieving these aims and goals and working on these strategic priorities. Obviously, I mean, this also needs to be supported by enablers. So we, as you mentioned, as a country, we don't have the funding mechanism in place to support such strategic priorities. So, okay, we can identify the areas, but where is the funding coming from? I know that there are initiatives in terms of setting up the funding agency within Abu Dhabi, but that's still into the making, and it's not materialized yet. So hopefully within like a year or two, there will be some funding. So as university, we are having to then rely more heavily on creating partnerships with industry. And obviously, I mean, this comes also with its difficulties. So again, I mean, it's very difficult to engage. It's difficult to understand what the companies want to do. It's difficult also if you are working within a consortium of companies, for example, what is pre-competitive and what is competitive, and how do you deal with these issues. Now, when you look on the education side, I mean, just to think about sustainable energy, and in general, I mean, this is a very multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary area. And if you look at the way that universities set up, I mean, sometimes it's too conventional. I mean, you have these silos that work into like conventional structures and departments and so on, whereas the nature of the area itself is multidisciplinary and cannot be done in isolation. So this is also one of the internal challenges within universities, that how do you overcome this, whether it's in the education side or on the research side. So for example, in the education side, we cannot afford anymore to have sort of, let's say, programs about energy in one department. I mean, it needs to be sitting somewhere in between, because, I mean, the knowledge that you need, the skills that you need, all the departments, whether it's mechanical engineering, whether it's electrical engineering, whether it's civil engineering, materials, they need to contribute to this. And even if you look at within a conventional major, for example, let's take mechanical engineering. Again, I mean, if we are going to produce the type of graduates that are expected to contribute to this to the sector, then we cannot afford to have this conventional major anymore. I mean, they need to know more than just engineering. They need to know about the economics. They need to know about ecology. They need to know about many more things than just their discipline. And the same goes with the research. Again, how do you create and form multidisciplinary teams? Again, this is a challenge. Within Khalifa, for example, we have now created an energy cluster, and this spans almost all the departments. We have people from electrical, we have people from mechanical, we have people from applied math, we have people from the science side, and they are working into multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary projects that are related to energy. Another example that I would like to cite is a joint center that we formed with, for example, Etisalat and British Telecom. Again, this is an example of a joint or an initiative that was taken to go and get funding from the industry. And now this center is producing patents and working in areas related to energy, although it's more into the ICT. And as Professor Vladimir mentioned, I think this is one of the good things about software and telecommunications, that you can get the fruits very easily. So they are, or very quickly, they are looking at things like demand side management, use of ICT, green ICT. So I think there are things that we can do, but obviously there are challenges as well.
Thank you. So much like what Vladimir said, understanding the challenges and trying to build programs and frameworks to allow you to address those programs in the best way possible. I appreciate that. Robbie, now it's to you. So Lockheed Martin, back on the international perspective, is known to be one of the global leaders in research and innovation in multiple different spaces. So you have aerospace and defense, you have security, you have ICT, doing so much. And as the Vice President of Technology Innovation, how are you seeing innovation happen in Lockheed Martin? And more specifically, how has Lockheed Martin thought about innovation and its context of working with universities?
Well, thank you, Steve, for this opportunity to join this esteemed panel. This is my first time in the UAE, but Lockheed Martin, as a global security company, has actually been working with UAE for over 3 decades, aligned with their security objectives as well as their strategic workforce development. So this issue of innovation and from an industrial perspective is very interesting, because when you look at the innovation chain, it starts with really ideation or invention. And as Vladimir actually pointed out, the university role is really to create knowledge and also to produce students. So when it comes to innovation in an industrial setting, you're talking about taking ideas and knowledge and turning them actually into products and services. So that's why it's so important. It's vitally important for us to team with universities because they are producing the future workforce, and in addition, they're also producing a lot of the foundational knowledge, the basic research that ultimately leads to products and services. And in our strategy, when we deal with universities, of course, and right on the panel, I have some colleagues. We work closely with Khalifa University and Masdar Institute here within UAE, as well as MIT, through the MIT Energy Initiative, because again, for global security, energy is a very key component, and we, as being a forward-leaning global security corporation, really worry about the nexus of food, water, and energy. So when we interact with universities, we're really looking for strategic partnerships. We're looking for, obviously, the world-class leading researchers in a particular field. Again, the laboratory capabilities, the research, the students that will come out from the laboratories. We're also looking from a strategic alignment perspective. If we deal on an international level with other countries, we are aligning our strategic research objectives with those of our customers within the companies. For instance, UAE and innovation in terms of energy and sustainability. Those are things that we align with. The other important thing is when we deal with universities, we realize that we have to have patience and dedication because we are dealing with students in the academia. There is a different timeline in terms of industry and having to have rapid accelerated timelines to produce a product into market. And then lastly, I think it's also very important when we look across where we choose our universities. In addition to our customers and our strategic alignment, it's also the locale, because in innovation there is something to be said about the locale of the interesting confluence between universities and incubators and small businesses. So there's a reason why Silicon Valley works, or the Boston Route 28 corridor, and so that's another consideration we look for when we interact with universities. So at the end of the day, it's universities are vital for our innovation process in terms of knowledge, as well as students as our future workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that, and I think it gets back to the points from the university's perspectives, trying to understand where research education needs to go. Having partners like Lockheed Martin, of course, helps direct that use inspiration and seeing where our graduates need to be doing their R&D and hopefully get employed. Thank you. So now we'll come back to a local and international organization with Michael. You are the Vice President of Innovation at Baruch, which is joint venture between ADNOC and Borealis, so there's a sort of a global flavor to it. You're also in a slightly different sector with regard to sustainability. You work in the area of polymers, and so you think about plastics, and you're thinking about innovation in a space where some might think that's not a place that's highly sustainable for our future. So how is the Vice President of Innovation, with sustainability, I know it's your core of your company, how are you thinking about sustainability as you plan out innovation and research in Baruch?
Thanks, Steve. I think first, thanks for the invitation to be part of this panel. I think it's a very important discussion. I mean, for Baruch, when we look at investments in research and development, we hold them to the same standards basically as all of the investments that we have in our portfolio, which means that there needs to be a sound business case behind any investment we make. It turns out, though, if you look at our portfolio, profitability and sustainability actually go hand in hand. And when we do our portfolio management, we don't actually need to kind of subsidize these projects or programs that have a sustainability theme to them. And there are a couple of reasons for this, but I think it's kind of a mix between market push and market pull effects, and we look at it from the commercial standpoint. And plastics, really, if you look at any of the critical challenges we face as a planet, really, a lot of the critical challenges that have been raised as part of the meetings here over the past few days, like access to drinking water, access to energy, access to food, to healthcare. If you look at any of these, plastics really are fundamental to the best solutions that we have today to address these problems. If we take a specific example, maybe to illustrate it, you can take something like a bottle of drinking water, and if you look at the cap, Borouge, we make the polymer material that's used to make these caps. And you probably don't pay much attention to these little caps, but if you think about it, over the past few years, these caps have been getting a lot smaller. They've been getting shorter, and they've been getting lighter. And we're really the company that's behind this trend, and we're pushing this trend. The reason we can do this is because we've invested a lot in developing technologies to do what's called down gauging, which means we get the same performance out of the plastic, but actually by using less material, we can have the same packaging performance. And for water, it's actually not such a tough application, but if you think about a bottle of Coca-Cola going around the city of Abu Dhabi in August when it's 50 degrees outside, I can tell you the pressure in that bottle is something like over 10 bars. So you really need a pretty sophisticated solution to be able to keep that bottle closed, to keep the drink inside fresh. So we offer these solutions for down gauging. We've also developed a suite of technologies that allows these plastics to be processed at lower temperatures. So when I come back to kind of the push and the pull effects, the value proposition basically to the cap maker that we have is they can improve productivity, right? They can run their lines faster, they make basically more of these caps in less time, and that's how they make money. They also can lower their manufacturing costs by lowering the actual processing temperature of the caps. The pull comes from all of us maybe through the brand owners like the Coca-Colas, the Pepsis, the Masafi Waters of this world, that basically say, we want less packaging. And if you look at the balance of these two effects, right, we position ourselves very well as a company. So kind of to close the circle here, sustainability, when we look at plastics and being an innovative plastic producer, is really not a threat. It's actually a great opportunity for us to take a seemingly kind of commoditized application like bottle caps and really turning it into something that's value add. And this is why we've invested tremendously here in Abu Dhabi to build really a state-of-the-art innovation center to develop these products and applications for our customers here in the region and around the world.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. And it's actually very nice to hear this because innovation is not new, clearly, in Abu Dhabi. Innovation is happening in some of the priority sectors that have been established a long time ago. So we're very proud that you're doing this work, and it's certainly going to help a sustainable future, although maybe that's not top of mind for people that think about plastics. At this moment, we're going to transition. If there is any questions, I'll take those from the audience. If not, we'll go back to a panel discussion with questions for myself. Does anybody like to have a question for one of the panelists? Okay, we'll keep going then. I'm going to come back to Michael Alstom. So Michael, you have told me, and I'm quite aware, that innovation is one of the pillars of Alstom, and creating an innovation culture in a company cannot be an easy thing. How does Alstom go about establishing innovation as a core competence and making that one of the cultural aspects that is pursued by all the employees in the research and development division or more broadly?
There are a lot of elements in creating such a culture. One of these elements is awarding systems, which you have to have we have an annual innovation award system within the company which creates additional ideas through several themes which are strategically important on the energy sector within our company. But there is also a cooperation innovation system that we are seeking in the open innovation way for universities to cooperate with us, even companies to cooperate with us, to come with their ideas and to interact with them. There is always, and I would refer to there's always an interaction between the universities and the industries. In my lot of visits I have as universities, I'm really astonished what I'm seeing when I'm visiting the labs and going through the labs. But then there are some certain elements which are missing, where the industry can bring in the kick. One of the elements, for example, is costs. And I don't know how many universities are teaching engineers, but how many actually engineers can come to a university and make a lifetime calculation about the cost of the thing they are developing? So there are some elements in that. The other one is the holistic approach, is my experience, where you need this awarding system in presentations, or even sometimes I'm saying it's more often needed that the industry is invited to the universities on university days, as we call it in Alstom, where we can present what the problems are. I have with me a 3-pager with problems which we see as an industry, and I'm distributing it to the industry, and I'm getting feedback, wow, yeah, you're right, we didn't know about that. I mean, we see out there from, I think it's at one of the stand, a robot, which is cleaning solar panels. My question would be, and I didn't got an answer, why does he not detect errors? Why does he not have the ability to maintain it and even repair it? So I have students who showed me a robot which can fly around with a camera, and I said, fine, can he fly in 300 degrees atmosphere in a boiler, detect the errors in a weld, and then even perhaps make a picture of it and identify the pipe which has a leak? So these are the feedback we as an industry have to give to the universities, and that is one of the reasons to create such an innovation culture as well in cooperation with the universities, and that is for us very important.
Thank you, appreciate that. I'm going to ask the next question to both Vladimir and Mohammed, and this is going to be a question, I'll start with Vladimir. MIT is now embarked on its nanotechnology initiative, MIT.nano, and I know in addition to your role as the Associate Dean for Innovation, you're spending a lot of time thinking about where the future is going in nanotechnology. So can you tell us a little bit about where, from a university perspective now, so focused on innovation, you see universities contributing to the future of sustainability, the future of energy? What kind of breakthroughs might we see? What kind of technologies might be out there based on the things you're seeing today?
Oh, absolutely. One of the main innovation houses that we see for MIT in the next decades to come is indeed in the field of nanotech. Roughly speaking, a quarter of our graduate students are there working on medicine, biology, electrical engineering, physics, better cement. We'll be working on the nanoscale in order to come up with the answers to those questions. Very simply, here just a couple of examples. Last year, a study from MIT has shown that if you look at cement generates 10% of all the CO2 emissions of the world. Yet cement is a composition of carbon and calcium. Making of the carbon that goes into cement generates CO2. It'd be really good to reduce the amount of carbon. Would that be a good thing to do? It turns out yes. And actually, if you do it, cement will be stronger and less brittle, because the nanocomposition of the calcium to carbon has not been studied to such precision that we can do right now. And actually, that nano precision of measurement allowed us to recognize that, yes, you can change the proportions significantly to the benefit of the CO2 reduction. Look at medicine. Medical advancements that we do are actually all going to be in a nanoscale. If you smell anything, you're smelling it because the molecule happens to be 1 nanometer in size. If it's any bigger, it wouldn't be volatile enough for you to smell it. If you taste it, similarly, it's a 1 nanometer size item that you're tasting. That's what gives your taste buds the response. The result of that is that if you look at the size of the cell, which is about 1,000 nanometers, you need to affect the fractions of the cell. Is it the ion channels or is it a medical delivery? That again, medicine is on the scale of 1 nanometer. If you want to affect those in then positive ways, medical advancements are entirely based on nanoscale. And actually using technologies we have developed for silicon electronics, among most things. I look at, for example, my pants that don't wrinkle anymore, or my shirt that doesn't stain anymore, because there are nanoscale fibers for the shirt and there are nanoscale coatings on my pants, developed through the semiconductor industry developments of the decades past. Much of the work that we do on the nanoscale, enabled by the semi-development of the 1990s, indeed is being translated into every single field across MIT science and engineering. And as a result, if we look forward and say, what is the guiding force that will give you the physical ability to transform the world? It's the investigation of the nanoscale and applications of nanoscale. And you guys right now, those of you who have Samsung Galaxy phones, you have organic LEDs as a front screen. Those are 100 nanometer thick films with the middle 10 nanometers glowing to give you the image. That's nanoscale, glowing for you. If you have iPhones in your pocket, you have liquid crystals. Those happen to be 1 nanometer wide molecules, few nanometers long, that turn back and forth to give you the liquid crystal effect that makes your TV screen. Everything inside your iPhone, is it transistors? I can keep on going, right? I mean, there are examples after examples after examples. We are surrounded by the enabling abilities of the nanoscale. And as a result, the next steps that we need to develop in order to advance the world as we know it is indeed investigations of the nano elements. So from MIT perspective, we are making a humongous, call it bet or call it prediction. And we're investing in a new nano facility located, in our case, right in the middle of campus, right next to the MIT Dome. and connect it to every single department of MIT so that all of us can have a single space used by about 2,000 people, about a quarter of our graduate students, roughly speaking, in the course of a year, to enable us to make these dramatic advancements, and also allow us to have a place that would cross the disciplines. Human friction, right, enables tremendous innovation. Ability of people to change their perspective because they met someone from a different field. So come with a spot that collects people, a nano innovation house. Now in our case, clean room spaces, imaging spaces, prototyping spaces, where you can take those basic ideas from nanoscale and make something you can hold in your hand so you can show it to the world and hence make a dramatic change. So these are the advancements you're looking at.
Thank you. And so Mohammed, not necessarily on nano, but where is Khalifa University investing in its R&D activity to set the stage for the future?
I think we have a wide range of activities, whether it's related to energy or not. But I mean, just to continue from that, I mean, we have a group of faculty that are working in new nanomaterials, for example. And these are targeted towards more of energy harvesting and energy storage applications. We have some initiative also jointly with Masdar, for example, and this joint center that we have around low energy or energy efficient electronic systems that are again going to some of the areas that Professor Vladimir just mentioned. How do we produce more energy efficient electronic devices and that go into things like mobile phones and so on. We have also, as I mentioned, work on optimizing or on energy efficiency. For example, when it comes to the how do we use some of the more mature and developed technologies that are used in the telecom sector, so that we can use them within the energy and the power sector. So, I mean, when you look at things like smart grid, even some of the predictive analysis technologies or techniques, algorithms that are used mainly within the telecom operators, but we are now using those and taking them and reformatting them and looking at, for example, predictive analysis of energy consumption within building, how do we design smart buildings and so on. So these are some of the things that we do around the energy efficiency.
That's very interesting. It gives the understanding that the universities have to be looking out there. They have to be looking in the future. So it's an application focus, but it's also thinking what can be, not just what is today. And I think that's excellent comments from both MIT and Kustar. So now I'm going to come back to Dr. Yahya, and you had some very good points about human capital development, but I know you're also thinking about innovation here in the country, and Tawazin's thinking about innovation, being part of this entire movement to take sectors forward in an innovative way. How are you thinking about this innovation in the UAE, and particularly from a Tawazin perspective, as you're trying to bring the manpower to this and excite them?
It takes three entities to work together: the government, academia, and the industry. And I think in the past, still today, we are operating in silo, and that silo has to be reversed. And a consortium. We would like to see a consortium of university. University need to be talking together. We, as an industry, need to create an alliances, and government has to come up with some regulation and research funding agency, which is in the making. What we are soliciting here, that Professor Dr. Vladimir mentioned, that university is very good at solving problems, but we don't know what to solve. So to come and understand what are our pain in the industry, what problem do we face, what are the challenges, So then they can, task dear student and faculty researcher to solve the problem that impact the society, that impact the community, that impact the industry. What Tawazin is doing, we have now started creating these alliances. We are in more talk now. We have a project with Masdar. We are working with the UAE University, with the Khalifa University, UAE University, as well as others. Plus, we are now putting together this centralizing or influencing the centralization of the research, funding in the country. End of the day, for us is, product to market. How long does it take It's not about the TRL 1, 2, 3, if I may use the term, technical term here, 1, 2, 3. We want to prototype and we want to, our stakeholder are there. So we all have this speed, the need for a speed to the market. And in the research and development area, you have to have the patience. So there is got to be some common ground that we can meet, perhaps at TRL 4 and 5. The academia has to move up and we need to go down. Now, what we are doing, we are also collaborating with our defense partners. They have the know-how, they have been in the business for quite a long time. And the life is too short for all of us to make all the mistakes. So we need to, we are learning from them and we are collaborating. Quite a lot of time the word collaboration is used, but on breakthrough technology, nobody likes to share. The cliche is there, and everybody pretends to use this word. But I think on the breakthrough, that collaboration stays as a word, it stays as a jargon. So I think on a positive side, I see the universities are becoming closer to the industry. We are getting closer to the university or to academia. Government is stepping in. There is a realization that there is not enough fund allocated for research to take place. And I hope that next year, if in such a forum or such a panel, we will not have the same discussion that we are having today. At least we have forwarded our agenda a bit closer to reality. So these are the perspective I could put forward as a tawazun.
That's excellent. So these are points on the industry and the university collaboration. I just want to finish, if you both, Robbie and Michael, could just very quickly say what you think are the key success factors, and if you've observed any real significant achievements. I know maybe Lockheed already has a little bit more history to say something about that, but just where does university industry come together, and what things have you seen come of that, very briefly?
So just very briefly, thank you, Steve. I think from a Lockheed perspective, one of sort of the central guiding principles that our CEO, as well as my direct boss, Dr. Ray Johnson, the Chief Technology Officer of the corporation, is really to focus on collaboration and inspiration. Collaboration in the sense of working much closely or closer together with other even industries as well as academia. I think it's very important because the problems, the challenges we face today are very complex problems that really require multidisciplinary solutions. So from an academic perspective, it's not it's partnering with one particular department. You really have to partner across the spectrum of departments. And I think what what Vladimir had been talking a little bit about of putting together these innovation centers, they are multidisciplinary in nature. So that whole collaboration effort is important. The other key thing is the inspiration part. And I think as Dr. Yahya mentioned about the whole workforce perspective, is the role within industry is not only to inspire ourselves, our industrial sector, but it's also it's that pull, the sort of the user pull on the future workforce. And so the fact that we inspire future generations of students that these are complex problems that we need to solve, I think is also an important element of our engagement with universities and the broader innovation ecosystem. Thank you.
Yeah, I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago and I heard there's an interesting kind of quote that I picked up on there. I wish I could claim it's mine. But basically it goes that research is taking money and turning it into knowledge. Innovation is taking knowledge and turning it into money. And there's a big difference there, right? So I think what we look for, and I think in university collaborations, and this was alluded to, if we look at the universities and the institutes as really being the foundation of generating knowledge and talent in society, which they are, I think we look at basically partnerships where we can take that knowledge and take that talent and really find innovation with it, which is find really opportunities that are beneficial, but as I say, that will ultimately improve the profitability of the company. And this takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of trial and error. It takes a lot of effort, but I think we've demonstrated that it is possible, and there are a lot of great partners here in the region and around the world with whom we work to identify where is the knowledge, and from our side doing the homework and finding how can we pair that up to a real opportunity.
Thank you. And so unfortunately we're out of time, but I'd just like to recap that certainly we know now that in this innovation system that's being developed, the R&D, the human capital, the policies and the frameworks that are supportive of that, and also physical financial capital, they're all key elements. But you've got to look out in the future. As we've heard from all the panelists here, you've got to think where the use is for the research that we've done in the universities. You've got to see how that's going to excite the future generations of students and employees in the companies. And you've got to make sure to always have that vision, not just what is today and what will be in the next week, but what's going to happen in the long term. And that's where the breakthrough innovations happen, and that's why we see innovation and not just R&D and not just education being what the UAE is pursuing. So with that, I'd like to thank all the panelists once again. Please join me in thanking the panelists, and that'll be our session.